Okay, good morning everybody, council staff and all those who are joining us online today. Welcome back, 2024. Whoa, where did 2023 go? We have no apologies, we're all here. We've got James Sainsbury joining us remotely today. Welcome James, and that's all clear, no apologies. We just have one additional business item that wasn't on our agenda, it's just an information received. It's the report for the Risk and Assurance Committee. It's held yesterday, 23rd, so it's not urgent, it's just additional, so it's I need to make it clear. No declarations of interest. Oh, we need a mover for a second that this line can be received. Thanks, Kevin. Seconded, Caleb. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Any declarations of interest today? And can I have the confirmation of our minutes from 13th of December, please? Yeah. Move Sarah Jane, seconded Sue. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay. We will now head into item 7.1. Oh, we'll do the Risk and Assurance report. Yes. We'll do that first, actually. So, welcome Jadine. She's online this morning remotely. We had, if you'd like to present a report about excellent meeting yesterday. Can't hear you, Jadine.
No. No.
What if you what if she goes out and comes back in?
Try it, yes. Yes, definitely. There's lots of time.
No, I can't hear you. Yeah, she'll go out and come back in.
Strange, isn't it?
You will have read the report if you struggled to. Did you all receive it yesterday? See it go through yesterday?
And I set something up last night too.
Yeah, that's separate, yeah. Try again.
Yeah.
No.
I think that's
So at least we've received the.
yeah, it's in Teams.
Yeah.
It up if you like.
Yeah, that would be good. It was also emailed. Start, don't we? So we'll just. Obviously, a lot of what we discussed yesterday is on today's agenda anyway. Audit team. Do something. So I guess we can cover it off. Jamie's join us. Yeah, Jess and Battle will do. Sorry?
Do 7.1 first.
Yeah, it might be a better idea actually. Yeah, let's just hold that and perhaps jump to.
Has anybody else got problems, meetings and Teams?
So yeah, it's in the the meeting.
Yeah. Good morning, Jennifer.
Morning.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, we're back into it. So obviously this item is an approval for the community initiatives grants policy. And just to remind you that we had discussed this in the previous meeting, and that management would staff would assess and go through the decision matrix, and management would make that decision. If we can always review it down the track. That's the basic analysis of where that's at. So following along from the natural and cultural environments policy, basically followed that template. Yeah, welcome Jennifer, and hope I'm stealing your thunder, but I thought, well, I'd just mention that this is what we discussed in the previous meeting. So I could then carry on into your unit. So
thank you, Your Worship. As was very well said, I'm just responding to the direction that you provided us in December. You've had the policy to review. You certainly have modeled it off of some of the other MPDC policy grants that have worked. And just I wanted to reiterate that we have requested that you consider the delegation of the approval of those grants to the manager of partnerships, strategy, and governance, and the team lead of placemaking and governance. And you've done that before, and by all accounts seems to be working well. Did also want to clarify that's if everything fits neatly in a bow and fits within the policy. If we do get things that are outside of the policy, we certainly are open to coming to council. And we also want to tell you that we're going to come to you and give you updates on this. We expect these to move pretty quickly. I can also share that staff have been busy doing the operational side of things behind the scenes. So the idea of getting the applications ready, the process is ready, and that's well underway. So I guess I would say I will take the report as read.
yep. So have you got any questions? Anyone happy to move the recommendation? Oh, that's right, we were adding one so that council is authorised to make minor amendments to the documentation to ensure accuracy and to correct minor errors. So that's just a number 4 to add on to those first 3 recommendations. Caleb, you're happy to move that?
Happy to second it.
I'll second it. That's right, Gary had moved, hadn't he? Sorry, Derek. Yeah, moved Gary, seconded Caleb. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Gary.
Thank you for this direction. The team is really excited about getting this underway. Thank you, everyone.
And to reiterate too, also check that the better of payment is still happening. There has been no indication that government is withdrawing that money at this point. Try JD again.
Yeah, that's the way.
Yeah.
Just a bigger plan.
It's just
Okay, so this is just the JD summary of our meeting yesterday. And because we updated, the first one was just updating our program for the year, and we've included just a version C update at each meeting, or each regular meeting, like for yesterday's, it's a special one for the consultation document draft. So we've it just needs to fit in the general routine, and we decided that safety and wellness needed to be a regular standing item for risk and assurance. Yeah, she's back. JD, can you unmute and join us?
Kia ora team, my apologies for the technical issues on my side. I've had to join via my cell phone now. So thank you, me, Adrienne, for taking the councillors through the startings of our hui yesterday. So I'm not quite sure what happened, but I'll just give a quick summary if that's okay. So kia ora koutou, we had our first Risk and Assurance Committee hui yesterday, which was focused on the draft 2024 to 34 LTP, consultation documents and associated supporting documents. At the hui, we also received a report that was commissioned by the MPDC team for an independent review of the LTP, which found that we're in a good position and small improvements were identified, which will be addressed by the team as the project progresses. We agreed to continue the current program in relation to the LTP 2024 to 34 adoption by 30 June 2024. We also received the MPDC liability management policy and discussed the increase in the net debt to revenue ratio from 150% to 175%, to create a bit of headroom for the team, noting that 175% is a target, and I'm sure that that will be debated today by councillors. And also note that Manaia is doing work in relation to whether MPDC's Three Waters recoveries are sustainable for the long-term plan for the future. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I hope that provides a brief summary, and the rest is contained within the report that I can see on the screen. So happy to take any questions. Kia ora.
Thanks, JD. Any questions around the conversation? Obviously, it's recommended by Risk and Assurance, and when these other items come up, we can.
I just wondered why the debt ceiling they were talking about when lifted to 175%, it was going to top out at 161% or something of revenue. Was there any thought that maybe, you limit them at 165 to maintain headroom or something like that, or why was the decision to go straight to 175%?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we debated where the line should be or could be drawn between 150% and 175%, and we also talked about we could actually incrementally go up to test the appetite of the respective committee members as to where they saw it, somewhere between 150 and 175. But ultimately we landed with the 175, thinking that that was prudent, but also recognising that that's a target and it provides the flexibility for the team to work within that range, noting that 150 was an arbitrary figure in the first place, but also impressing on the management team that the expectation is to still live within our means. So I take your point in relation to why 161. However, it could have been why 162, why 164, or why 169. So we landed with the with the target as it was because it gave the flexibility, but also noting that it was just a target, and we were expecting that the management team would keep us informed in relation to where the organisation was tracking. I'm hoping that that answers your question in some way.
I think you mean not a target.
Yeah, not a target. Yeah, it's not a target, and
It's a limit.
yeah,
Not a limit, not a target.
And I
Like
guess
speed.
one of the things that we did discuss, just to add on to that, and to use Kevin's term, was it's like an insurance policy. If we did get to 160, 165, and we had a significant event happen in this district, then, and we needed to borrow it, we would have to go follow a process. So it just gives us some headroom. It is, we are to, as councillors, to still be prudent and not say, oh, we can borrow to 175. That there has to be a disciplined approach to our borrowing, very disciplined, because yeah, we could have tried to stay at 150. We did have that conversation, but knowing what we know today and what we don't know tomorrow, and the costs that are increasing, and of course the whole thing will change with Three Waters. There's still the uncertainty of whether Three Waters will still be in our books. So yeah, that was the weighing up basically, wasn't it, JD? But I think is there any other questions for the team? You'll recall Angela Jane was the independent reviewer, consultant, and yes, it was quite good. The feedback she gave, I think staff really appreciated. It wasn't, like we were on track. There was only some minor sort of tweaking that would improve it. So it was good feedback. So there's nothing else. So would someone, thanks JD, would someone like to move that the report be received? Thanks, Gary. Seconded, Sarah Jane. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, JD. It was a really good meeting yesterday. Really enjoyed the discussion.
Cool. I'll just point out to the team, just congratulations were given to the MPDC team that were involved in developing the draft LTP consultation document and supporting documents. It's a huge amount of mahi, and they really did put in a lot of work to ensure that the Risk and Assurance Committee knew exactly how they came to the recommendations that they had proposed. So I just want to shout out to the team for the work that they have done. So kia ora. Have a great meeting.
Great. Thank you, JD.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Okay, right, we'll move on to item 7.2, which is the review of the development contributions policy.
Susan's in the way.
Oh.
Text to get it.
So we'll all. Oh, have I jumped one?
No.
Yeah.
7.2.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. We'll do the final item, which was the mayoral diary. Is there any questions? It's several months all at once on item 8.1.
I'd just like to say you were very busy, so I will note that we have accepted it. So, yeah.
Thank you. You'll just try and keep it rolling. I've seconded Sue's. Thanks, Dane. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Yeah, I just had the one call on Boxing Day.
Oh, I saw that.
And an email, and yeah,
It's good.
I
that
didn't
you're
put the laptop away.
Nice, it's great.
Okay. Yes, it was moved Sue seconded Dane. It's all right, you moved here.
I read the contribution policy. There's nothing major in there. I could
No,
about
issues.
quite
Things
happily
now.
move it really because it's not. It's policy and these.
It is, and there's
It's
just a
not.
few tweaks, so I'll let Susan read it. So we've read the draft, taken as read, it's just highlight the changes.
So, yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair and councillors. Yeah, the changes to the policy are mainly updating all the population projection and reflecting the high projection that councillors adopted through the mid-year figures, and putting our capital works program into the model that results in the development contribution policy. Those are the main changes. There are some smaller changes just for clarification purposes. The main one there is around financial contribution and making clear that that is charged through the Resource Management Act in our district plan. And we've had some queries from developers about that. And that's the draft at the moment. I'm looking to get that peer reviewed before it is going out for consultation from the legal advisor as well, just to check that everything is in line. Yeah.
Oh, any questions for Suze? I think it's pretty clearly on what the policy's for. It's not always easy to communicate to people. Right, would someone like to move that the report be received and the draft? Okay, move Sue, seconded Sarah Jane. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Carried. Thanks, Sue. Put trip down and up. We're running ahead of schedule. Okay, we'll now move to Lania. Thank you, Lania. We've got the item 7.3, which is the adoption of the draft liability management policy and the draft investment policy. And the conversation yesterday was why was liability not borrowing? We're borrowing. It's technically what that is, but it's just a word. It's
legislation.
It is, and it is legislation. It's in the local government.
It's not to say we can't change it.
No, but the question was asked because obviously liability borrowing. Yeah. Thanks, Tate.
Good morning, everyone. So yesterday we talked through the key things. We're talking about the net debt to revenue limit that we've got in the policy currently. And the other thing was an issue that Nia's raised about if we look specifically at Three Waters debt to revenue. So they were the key things. But yeah, if there's any questions on the proposed changes that we've made to the policy, other than the net debt to revenue ratio, then happy to answer any questions on that.
And I guess I highlight here that the Risk and Assurance Committee has recommended we look to 1.5.
Yeah.
It is council's decision as to whether we do or not. Just to reiterate. So is there any questions for Anya and Nine? So,
Perhaps probably more a ponder, you know, I understand that it is not a target. That's what this commission is. And I guess this is really the mind of a household manager. When you lift it, you do tend to have the ability to go there. That's my only thing. And I do understand the water issue. I really get that we will have issues going forward. And yes, I also understand that we are very, very, very prudent. So that's all that's just been going through my mind. But I do understand that there is a need. But I open the conversation that way. That's the mind of somebody who's just sort of thinking from a domestic point of view. But and I also have to say the water situation, we don't know do we know anything that's going to happen? Do we know anything? Nothing. So I understand there's challenges ahead. We can always change our mind, but yeah, that's just my ponder.
yeah. So my challenge to us all on that is it's our discipline. It's not only staff's discipline, it's actually council's discipline to manage.
Expectation.
Yeah. So yeah, it's up to ponder. But anyway, Peter, you right on?
Yeah, I guess the issue I have is that when the council has this limit of 150%, along comes, the big bad costs, and all of a sudden council can't function within that limit. So we sit around the table and we just increase the limit. And my concern would be, what happens in another 5 years' time? Do we just keep putting that limit out, and of course the debt keeps increasing, and we, having to service that debt. So it's a bit of a concern I've got, and I appreciate that we can't, these projects have to be done, so money's got to be borrowed to do them. So that 150% might be unrealistic, but that's just the, concerns. Is it too easy for us to set a limit and then just increase the limit?
So just to clarify, the 175 is the local LGFA limit for our council.
Yes, so we'd set the policy at a sort of more conservative level than what the LGFA considers to be prudent for a council of our size and nature.
So our 150 is what we've set historically, probably 20 odd years ago. And the landscape's changed, but the 175 is the limit. To go higher than that, what would we have to do? Just to give you some clarity, if the council did want to borrow more.
Look, the LGFA put a limit on what they consider prudent. I would imagine if we wanted to continue to borrow at the LGFA, we would need to convince them that a higher threshold would still be prudent. Ultimately, what's important in this whole discipline of setting limits is the attitude of lenders to us. And lenders consider, and through the LGFA, we've managed to get very good interest rates, borrowing rates. And the LGFA, the local government financing agency, apply some disciplines themselves over what we do. They look at all of our long-term plans, they look at annual plans, they look at our discipline. So they are satisfying themselves that we do what we say. So as soon as we start getting into limits that are what they consider not prudent for a local authority our size, then we would need to say to them, if we want to enjoy using those lower rates from them, we would need to demonstrate to them that we are still prudent. And that is possible. I'm sure that is possible. But the bottom line in all of this, I think, is we don't have to go through the LGFA. We can go somewhere else and we can have a higher limit. It will mean higher interest rates. It comes down to what lenders are prepared to, what they consider the risk associated with this council.
So it's like any business in that respect, that if you're at a higher gearing, you will pay more.
And so in the report, what Lania put was we could live with the 150 and apply some disciplines on ourselves because if we don't trip over the by March, and we come back into play. So we could do that. That puts a discipline, the Mayor is absolutely correct. That puts a discipline on you. It means that you would say if something did come up that we had to do, and we're going to tip over a limit, we would have to not do something else. That means if an event occurred, that we could not fund within these limits, we would need to be going to talk to some other lenders and face potentially higher interest rates. Where the discussion got to, and this is a very good discussion that came through yesterday from the Risk Insurance Committee, was this question of, do we apply the tension at 150 and try and discipline ourselves to stay within that and accept that we have no headroom for a while? Or do we, as the other view and the consensus view, I believe, from the committee was, hey, it's not a target, but we need to allow ourselves some headroom, because things do come up and we don't want to be constrained to the extent that we can't do other important things. So that was the essence of this, I believe, the discussion yesterday, and quite a robust discussion around that. So from an officer perspective, we would live with either. If you want to apply the disciplines, that's fine. If you want to, but if your objective is still have the discipline, but be able to respond to events, then we would say go to 175, because 175 is still considered prudent by the Local Government Finance Agency. Now, that, I'm sorry, Councillor Jager, I possibly haven't answered your question, mate. I don't know.
Can I make a comment? Because I personally would have liked to seen it left at 150, but I will go with the consensus, all right? But with the arguments we're putting. But where it's coming out is, you're talking about this, if we have an issue that would have to take us through. When you look at, and I'm looking at your first graph here that you sent, it's not as if we're intending to increase that borrowing, because if you look at it, our capital works drop off, right? So if you were to look at that graph, the blue line, all right, is dropping off. So it's not as if we're going to be compounding and compounding unless we had a complete disaster somewhere and we had to have a contingency. So I can see that we should well and truly be able to keep within that limit.
Can I just comment that, and I'm sorry to cut, but it's just, in doing the financial strategy, we put a lot of emphasis in that strategy, hopefully, that you saw, about what the influence of the three waters is. And we also have put in two different benchmarks, one for three waters and one for non-three waters. And I recall Councillor Tappan raised this question about the three waters we have less control of, because we are dictated to an extent. No, dictated might be a harsh term, but there's a huge influence on us by what our regulators say to us. So we put a capital program together that says this is what we believe we need to get done. We'd actually like to do more, but we don't think we have the capacity to do more. Within that, there is a risk that our regulator will say to us, one of our regulators, no, you need to do this right now. We're not prepared to wait. They might change our program for us. And so, as I say, we don't have control of that. So what that does is that limits, if we live within the limit, which it's your decision whether we stay at 150, 175. But if they do that, that restricts our ability to do, as Councillor Tappan, I think, pointed out in other committees you say, it restricts our ability to do other things. So that's what it comes down to, I think.
Okay. In your report, you mentioned the debt to revenue ratio for Three Waters was ballooning out. Now, explain to me what would happen, because you're saying that, what we rate it. What you're saying is what we rate to create the revenue isn't enough. Is that what you're really saying?
What I'm saying is, and I'm sorry to jump around, but if I go to the last slide on the that I sent out last night, which is, the last page, which shows your changes in rates between 3 waters and non-3 waters. And the Manhattan bar graph there, you'll see big peak and then dropping off right down, right? And your very low increases in 3 waters rates in the last 5 years of the, oh, no, sorry, not that one. Thank you. We'll put that up.
Yeah, it is next.
That one there. So you can see there that in this period here, very low increases in rates, yes? What went through my mind when I was writing this was, does that make sense to have those very low changes in rates when you've got your debt revenue ratio for 3 waters at over 300%?
So the question I have is, are you saying, should we be raising the rateable or what we're rating in those?
Yeah, and that's not, I'm not asking you to answer this, what I wanted to table
No,
is.
we need to understand.
So what I am saying, absolutely right. What I would say to you is to consider, and the chief executive and I have discussed this, and I thought he crystallised it very well in a number of ways. But he's saying, what you're telling me is we should be paying back some more debt. I said, absolutely. So instead of being at 1% or 2%, I'd be saying to you, maybe you need to be thinking about a bit more so that we start reducing that debt ratio for the 3 waters activities.
You've answered my question.
Because out here in the infrastructure strategy, coming on past the 10 years, we got some more capital coming.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't seem to me to be a prudent position for us to be sitting at, and if you could just go up the graph, it doesn't seem prudent to me for the 3 waters to be sitting up in that 300% area going forward.
So what, you're not saying it, but would it be prudent for us to rate higher to recover and pay off debt in those intermediate figures?
In the final 5 years of being, that's what I suggest you need to consider.
Right. So that would mean changing that structure.
Yes. And so to give you an example, and I'm not saying you should do this, but in the benchmarks I put in the financial strategy, I put a benchmark, I think, of 5% in for the non-3 waters rates after the first year, right? And I put 7% in for the 3 waters after the first couple of years as being your maximum. Now, I'm not saying you should go to 7% for the final 5 years, but to give you an example, if we went to 7% for those final 5 years, the debt to revenue ratio for 3 waters would drop down to about 260%. In my observation of all the discussions about the water entities, and just relating to that, I think they were looking at a debt to revenue ratio about 250 as being unacceptable for our utilities. So I just wanted to raise it for you to consider before we adopt the draft plan. Because if I go back to that very last one again, what that chart says to me, if you look at the 3 waters and council, but in the 3, everything is honky-dory because we've got really low rate increases. But to me, that's not true.
It's not telling the truth.
In my opinion, that's just my opinion.
So when you're trying to sell a story about what we should be rating, we've always said, we're going to be at 3%. What was
Rate
it?
increase,
Yeah, where we should be saying we are going to have sustained rates at a higher level to pay off the debt so that we don't get into this liquidity.
I just want to make
Getting to retirement, pay off your debt.
Yeah, and I just want to make the point, if you drop down to the very, just a couple of slides up, pages up, not that one now. Just bear in mind that our lenders look at this. They don't look under the hood, what I talk about looking under the hood, under the bonnet. We look under the bonnet. And all I wanted to flag to you is, whilst that position looks okay, and it will look okay to our lenders, reasonably okay, I think, anyway, we know what's under the bonnet. And in my head, I'm saying our industry, who are a big part of, and all our water users, and our wastewater users, they're supposed to be meeting the cost of the service, and it shouldn't be impacting necessarily on the general rate. And so I just think that that scenario is not looking, in my opinion, prudent for the long term, for the three waters.
Sorry, Dane.
So
Yeah.
I guess it's not my comment, but just a comment on that, I guess. If we got water meters in, you could add a water meter cost as opposed to putting rates up, then the heavier users would pay more towards the debt that the free water is creating.
100%, and of course the debt, water meters are in the plan.
Yeah.
And I think water meters will solve issues with development contributions too, but that's just my own personal opinion again.
So back to the percentage of debt that we're talking about. I guess when you say that, we have to be more prudent about our spending in regards to the ceiling and things, I guess my concern around that is that we're faced with so many must-dos that are so expensive that, our ability to be prudent in these coming years where we might push past 150%, I believe is going to be quite limited. I don't think that, I personally don't want to set a target of 175% because I would like to see some buffer. I think looking at the chart, we're going to need more than that. But to me, I think it's, 170 maybe. So there's a little bit left over, taking on board what Sue's comment are that you can treat it as not a target, but it's like that thing, the money is still always in the coffers if you need it. And sometimes you just feel like it's just a little bit easier to take it out. So I guess that's my point. And when we're faced with so many must-dos, you could use a slightly lower debt ceiling to say, let's draw that out a little bit. Let's leave. Well, that's a must-do, but maybe let's just take that must-do off the table, and it's not as much of a must-do as that one, and create a bit of room to wiggle around. And so yeah. So I don't know. I would rather see it be a little bit lower than 175, but again, like what Bruce said, if Ring wants to put it all the way up, then sure.
Yeah, I guess one of the risks that I'm aware of a council that has been directed by the regulator to address a water supply, and it's not in, they are required to do it. And so that full, I guess it's their decision what they're going to drop out. Yeah, and this is the risk that we face while the Three Waters is with us, and that's, we don't know what's ahead of us. So yeah, it's up to you guys. So I'll go to Dane first. You want Kevin? Kevin?
Yeah. I just the Three Waters is like a headless chicken to me.
Yeah.
I mean, no one knows where it's going to run. But all the 175 to me is it's an insurance policy. It gives us the ability to react if we have to. We don't have to go there. It's not a target. We don't have to use it. You look at that graph there. If we review it again in 3 years, we might bring it back down to 150.
Yeah.
So, which will, potentially that'll correlate with what the next 3 years, which is the real unknown area, will give us. So, it's not a target. Just like the speed limit's not a target. You don't have to go 100 kilometres an hour on the road. It's not necessary.
When you're doing 110 though.
I guess that's the challenge of this. I go back to the discipline of the people around the table, and that we make a conscious decision of that, and that's what we've got staff that behave prudently as well. So again, it's a human thing. I'll go Dane. Thanks, Hugh. Caleb.
Your worship, Caleb. But yes, it's understandable that you're confused. Firstly, thank you for the report. I am on, that we do need an increase in our debt limit, debt ceiling, call it whatever you like. I just think 175 is too high. I think maybe 170 is a good middle ground to go to. And if bad comes to worse, we still have some room to play with the OGFA. We have some sort of catastrophe or crisis or water regulated change, whatever it may be. I mean, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to increase our debt ceiling, but while I agree with Councillor Dewhurst that staying at 150 might be a good idea, I just think practically speaking, if we don't exhaust the offer of 175, but we stay at 170, and then we can review up or down from there, and we don't have to force ourselves to go, oh crikey, let's be even more prudent. Of course, we should try to continue to operate as if we are at 150, And then only in those extraneous circumstances do we go, actually, we kind of need to go up a little bit. So I think 170 top limit for me. And Councillor Stansbury has his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to go to James. Thanks, James. Noted. Hand up.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, terrific. Really great discussion, and including yesterday. Just a quick question. If hypothetically, if we didn't increase the debt limit beyond 150, a scenario came up where we were required to build a large water scheme, for example. At that stage, to increase the debt limit outside the long-term plan to accommodate that investment, that would require a consultation program. Is that right? We could do it. It would just take a little bit longer, slightly stickier process.
Yeah, sorry, you're not required to, your liability management policy doesn't require a consultation procedure. But if you're doing something that triggers your significance policy, which rating, debt to that level is made, so you might trip yourself up. So you're probably less a annual plan consultation.
So we are caught in a process that needs to be followed, which is basically James's question.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I guess probably that would bring me to my question about, raising the debt limit now does remove one of the checks and balances that we have on spending more money. If we keep it at 150 and something actually comes up that we have to do, that we're obliged to do through some outside body, we still actually have mechanisms to do that. It just requires a bit more due diligence to achieve it. So I don't see yes, there's an extra process we would go through if we needed to borrow more money, but I don't see that how we're, other than that, I don't see the downside of keeping it at 150. And I guess that's possibly relevant because listening to all of the discussions, even the idea of raising it to 175, that's fine, but it's like, just in the back pocket. There's not a particular project in mind.
Cool, thanks, James. So I suppose debt's always been a bit of a poison chalice or a sensitive area for local government to have discussion around, because people externally, you don't pay cash for a house. Everyone borrows for a house. And if you take the approach that you don't want to borrow, but you rather pay cash, which is a one end of the spectrum, then clearly your capital program will be significantly curtailed. And there have been councils up until very recently that paid for capital work out of cash. Now, is that an appropriate financial management decision to only pay cash? Some people would argue, no, you're not using your balance sheet properly. Because if you have to do things and want to do things, then borrowing is a legitimate technique. On the other hand, you don't want to get into the Auckland City situation of exposing yourself right to the limit necessarily, because your revenue stream, Auckland's revenue stream, for example, is hugely reliant on use charges, not on rates. And so they expose themselves right to the limit and find themselves in the position of having to savagely cut costs in reaction to dropping revenue. Now, we're in the fortunate position of could call it fortunate, I suppose, you describe it as fortunate, of saying that a large proportion of our revenue is rates, and therefore we can, well, I say it flippantly, we can raise rates. That's our security to borrow money. The decision about where you land on your debt is one, a matter of
attitude, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the work in the LTP, which incurs the debt, is approved by you. You have the decision whether to do it or not. And you might argue that by setting a target of 160 or 155, it requires you to have to convince your colleagues around the table that something that you may want to see happen should happen. Or, on the other hand, by setting 175, does that send a signal of largesse? Some people would argue no. So it's a pretty arbitrary, in some ways it's quite an arbitrary figure, but it creates an attitude, what you're doing.
James.
Yeah, and I guess just quickly responding to that, absolutely, I appreciate the equal risk of not using a spreadsheet to maximum potential. I would say that I guess my thoughts are really that thinking about this, I'm not so much thinking about projects in the LTP. What I'm thinking about is preserving that headroom for all of those unexpected things that may well come up. And I think that we need to be extra diligent because we're a small council with a small resource base and a small rating base. And I think that just keeping the debt ceiling at 150 is another level of protection to maintain that debt ceiling for the unknown event in the future. And just the awareness, I guess that's my thoughts. I think that 100. I mean, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it if the majority view is 175 is appropriate. That's identified as being prudent from outside parties, but I just think keeping it 150 is the best thing we can do to maintain capacity to deal with the unexpected. And it doesn't really put barriers up, as best I can tell. It means we need to go through a process, but it doesn't really put barriers up to going further. It just means that we go through that sobering second thought process to achieve that. Anyway, thank you.
To some extent, I think issues like Councillor Sainsbury did right. I mean, it is another step that can be achieved. I mean, having 150% or 160 and then finding that you've got a must do. The discussion or the tone of the discussion will be quite different and I don't mean to use it, don't cause any insult, but the spa pool. If we had the pressure to undertake the spa pool, but it was going to mean that we breach our debt limits, then the debate is somewhat more challenging.
And if it was regulated?
Then if it was a upgrade to a wastewater plant, but the regulator said you've got to do this, we've got to do it. So the tone of the discussion is quite different.
That comes down to the sort of the mindset of the council of the time, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think the point that Manaia is very prudently raised is this issue of debt to revenue ratio for Three Waters. We are in a position where our revenue for Three Waters is target rated to a portion of our community. If you go to Hamilton City, any of those other local authorities who may rate differently, some local authorities will not target rate their Three Waters, they may general rate it. And the issue is not quite so stark. We're in a position where we are saying you will pay a targeted rate for the service you receive. And I used the analogy yesterday, and I wasn't quite sure whether it hit the mark or not, of a holding company which had several companies under it. One of those companies suddenly has a blowout in its debt. The rest of the companies carry a liability for that through the holding company. What we have as far as our policy frame at the moment is general rates will not subsidise Three Waters. That is their stated rating funding position. So my only concern, I've raised Britain that may not come to anything, but and it, as Mania said, our funding agencies may just say don't want, not concerned. But the reality is that if suddenly our costs in Three Waters blow out and we're still under 175, just so for example, we use all the headroom on Three Waters and our debt to revenue for our Three Waters goes from 300% to 400% to 500% to 600%. Now that burdens the balance sheet, it savagely limits your ability to do anything else. And it means things like pool upgrades have to be put to one side. So by thinking about Mania's point about whether the revenue stream in Three Waters should decrease, but rather we should think carefully about increasing revenue to pay off our debt sooner, does that give our future generations a better opportunity to do other things outside of Three Waters?
That is, to me, the argument or the discussion today on whether we should go to 175 is actually almost irrelevant when we should be addressing where the difficulty is going to come, and it's going to come through the debt ratio for Three Waters. And so should we be saying, Mania, how do we keep our debt ratio for Three Waters at, say, 250, and how does that affect the rating structure over the next 10 years? That's what I'd like to see.
So I'll refer back because I wanted to just see what would happen if, in my opinion, low rate increases for the, as I'm repeating myself, but just to be clear, for the last 5 years of the plan, low rate increase or the level of rate increase that we're proposing for the Three Waters at those low levels, in my opinion, is not proven or sustainable. So I would, and I think this is driven because when I look at the chart, you can tell where the debt problem is coming from. So that's why I looked under the bonnet at what, and so you start addressing the revenue for the Three Waters, you create more headroom for the, yeah.
When we did the LTP 3 years ago, we didn't look under the bonnet.
We didn't have to.
No, in that respect, and you are now, and I think it's a very important issue to be addressed for this LTP.
And so from our perspective, we will live, it's your decision. It's as the chair put it yesterday, it's a question of risk appetite. So if you say to us 150 remains and we have to discipline ourselves, that's fine for us. The mayor's quite right. It's you who make the decisions and decide on what to defer. If at the same time you're saying 150 or 170, whatever that number is, but at the same time you're saying we are going to correct, let me use that word carefully, the ratio for Three Waters, you're solving both issues in my opinion, because that's where the source of the problem is. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying problem, it's not a problem. We have to change from where we are today to where we are in the future. And I think the point that the chief executive made there about, and I am thinking about past 10 years, and I'm thinking about what do we want to leave for those other generations? And I don't think historically that councils of the past would want to leave that kind of picture. So, oh gosh, it sounds terrible. I feel like I'm preaching. I do apologise. Anyway, it's
about the long-term view. This is about where we are now, and the decisions we make today and how it will impact for the future. So I'll go to
to me, I'm sort of thinking it through. It's like going to the bank and saying, I'll give you $1 million, but you only want 750. So you only spend 750. To me, it doesn't make any difference between whether it's 170 or 175. That's just irrelevant. I think that it is important that we look to the future. I guess I want to put point the finger at you guys first and say, what do you feel you need going forward? I know it's our decision and this conversation is really, really good, but what do you really feel you need?
The last page of my document,
yeah,
I would say an important strategic decision for you before you adopt the draft, not today. You don't have to make this decision today. This is just but it gives it context of the decision. My advice to you is to think very carefully about these blue bars in these last 5 years. And as the Mayor put it, Super Executive put it, I think we should be building in some provision for repayment of debt.
But going back, what number do you feel that you may need going forward? 175, 162? What?
Well, the only reason we went to 175 is because the LGFA said that's prudent.
Okay.
You could say 170. I mean, we don't mind the
It
number.
makes no difference, really.
Yeah, it's your call.
It's just a number.
It's an appetite thing, though. I think the point I pick up, and this is why we don't make a recommendation on it. It's your risk appetite.
I know it is, but I guess we also have to put a little bit of, we need a little bit of fact of how far you feel you probably need to go at this particular stage of looking at it. Because I mean, you're the experts in this. I'm quite happy. I agree going forward. It gives you the ability to move if you have to.
So if you see to us 170 because we don't want to go to the full hog, we want to leave some tension, we would be fine with that.
Okay. That's kind of what I wanted to hear.
I just want to, I pick up the point of Councillor Sainsbury made, and he's quite right. I guess what he's saying is the 25%, staying at 150, the 25% headroom with the LGFA still sits there, but to enact it, we have to go through a process. Right. I think that's what he's saying. So I take the point.
James.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was at the meeting yesterday and we had robust discussion about it. And as JD alluded to this morning, it was 175 is the limit, as it were, in terms of the discussion. And it was just, how could we get to a number between the 150 and the 175 and the difficulty around that? And that's why I suppose we left it at the 175 yesterday. I'm still comfortable about that because it is still prudent, but we still have to maintain our discipline around where we are because debt is debt. Debt has to be paid back. But one thing I've learned in my limited businesses is budgets are living and breathing, and you've got to have some effort to do it. So that's where we can choose any number that we like we're saying, but I don't want to be restricted. I don't want to misquote you, Kev, but I mean, like yesterday, we don't want to be in a position where we have to do something and we can't. So there still needs to be, and we sit here as governors and we do put pressure on making sure that we're making sound financial decisions, but I don't want to kind of get stuck on whether 170 or 168 or whatever the magic number is.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's why I was comfortable with the 175. Obviously that needs to be a consensus of council, but I mean we could argue all day about where we ended up, and that's why we ended up there yesterday. That's just some kind of context around it. How we all view that is fine because we all read the papers and we can make that call. But that's certainly I'm certainly happy with the 175. Not again targets and limits. It's not a target.
Okay, Peter, Kevin.
So just to apologise to my fellow councillors for the basic question I've got, which you probably will understand, but to clarify for me, 150%. If we stick to that limit, then council cannot borrow all the money it needs to do what's in the long-term plan. Is that correct? That's my understanding.
So the practical issue, what we are doing, and what we're gearing up to do, is to show this profile to our lenders, the 10-year profile, and say to them, is this going to be, because the breach is what, 160, 161s now, that's the top figure. So we'd be saying, look at our profile. Is this going to be a problem for us? Do you think? Is this going to impose additional lending costs on us or not? So we would ask for that advice. Obviously, if you if you move the level up, we wouldn't have to ask for that price. But so it's not saying we can't do it. It's about what is the cost of the borrowing? How is that affected?
So I mean, council has to borrow the money it needs to do what it has to do.
And it might cost more.
Yeah, that's right. Finance of debt and ratepayers pay for that, etc., etc. I mean, it seems a bit of a strange discussion to be having because, you know, you've got to borrow what you need to do the job, correct? So these are like, as somebody just said, pretty arbitrary figures, 150, 160, 170, you know, 200, whatever. I guess my underlying concern is if we went to 175% with this ratio is, you know, 5 years' time, something else comes along, we just got to borrow some more money, so we just up that figure again. So, you know,
I think that's where the 175 is what the financing act, that's the prudent. So to take it, if we went higher than that, we would be paying a higher rate. The gearing would, so therefore that's where a bit of thinking would have to be thought of the government to, well, what are we doing? Do we have to do this and that we have to do that? You know, that's that conversation.
So next, just checking on these figures, what's our roughly, you know, our net revenue? Is it, no?
It's about 85 million.
Okay.
For year one.
Yeah, that's right.
Obviously moves up.
All right.
Okay.
All done.
Kevin.
I was just going to say, basically yesterday we decided not to test every single number. It just basically signaled that we were okay with it increasing, and that was the top level. So at the end of the day, this committee was going to have to make the decision on what that percentage was going to be. So there was no point in the risk insurance committee doing it. But yeah, as I say, remember that this is going to be the Three Waters is a targeted rate. It's only the people who actually use it who are going to end up paying it. And if we pay it off over a really short time, then that's burdening those targeted ratepayers, which kind of scares me a little bit, because if the figures that you're looking at of 300%, 400%, 500%, I don't know what that equate to in the form of a rate increase, but it doesn't sound small. So yeah, it just scares me a little bit, and we've always been told in the past, or we have had an organisational review that told us we were too conservative. So we are very prudent in this council, sitting around this table. So putting 175 as the percentage doesn't force us to use it, just gives us the ability to react if we have to. That's all.
I guess the other side that we haven't probably discussed is, you know, you're talking about the lenders and things like that and what they're looking for, but what about public perception of us just going straight to a limit that someone else is setting? Is that going to be deemed as prudent by the public? Is that going to be, well, they only stopped at 175 because that's what someone else told them they had to do, you know? Or just stopping slightly short of that, maybe say, look, we've got some struggles, we need some more budget, but we're not prepared just to go straight to what someone else is telling us our limit is as well. Like, is there an argument maybe to be made in that, how the public would perceive if we did stop short of what that limit is slightly? I guess the other thing is, if you're talking about an $80 million revenue intake and the forecast debt is 161%, it's not you know, that's still an $8 or $9 million buffer above what the forecast debt is supposed to peak out at. So it's not like it's going to be, shouldn't be tight to be maybe a little bit lower. So yeah, well, anyway.
Did I tell James to either get on the plane or
me a bit of promotion slip?
Yeah.
To the bathroom.
James.
It's getting done. Right, Sarah Jane.
Yeah, look, 150% is still quite low compared to some of our neighbouring councils. You know, as Kevin said, this council is quite prudent in our approach to our debt. I'm comfortable with the 175. If it means that we can get the work that we need to done without, you know, having to really look at what those, you know, all of those nice to do should do's again, then I've got no issue with it. I mean, you know, we've seen what happens. I think we're still, you know, we'd still say that we're operating under extenuating circumstances, and we have done so, over the last 3 years. So I think it is time to look at that debt, and it was something that was brought up in the Te Aroha community meeting during our annual plan consultation. So I mean, I think we're just going around in circles, to be honest. We're all kind of saying similar things.
We're talking about 20 million.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, that's, And we've all acknowledged it's not a target.
So before we wrap this up, a bit more lights on, I see. One of the feedback that came back from our the independent reviewer of our document was that by us raising the ceiling, the headroom, giving us that headroom, actually tidied up the narrative in our consultation document. By not moving it, it didn't line up. And I didn't ask for specifics, but that was an observation made around that. And I see Noel nodding his head. So there is, and the thing is that we're at 150, but our projected increase is 162. So what are we telling ourselves, guys? We're kidding ourselves if we're going to leave it at 150. Yes, we don't do all our capital projects necessarily in 1 year, but extenuating circumstances, we are losing that headroom, and I think that's
how we pay it off. That's, I think, another story.
That is exactly it, and it's how we discipline ourselves, because it's always been about spreading the burden so that we don't try and do everything at once, that we do manage our projects in a way that manages our debt. Something to think about. So Dane, go, Caleb. I've got Dane in my brain. Yeah, I have to make sure you don't sit next to me.
Looks like maybe a note to the staff.
Sorry.
Don't wear a tie, whatever you do. So to my question that came to mind is, how do we service this Three Waters debt? And then the next question I had was, is an increase of 25% of our debt limit significant enough to trigger a significance policy?
Isn't this a separate conversation?
Yeah. The waters is a separate conversation. I think we need to deal with the debt limit and move on.
Otherwise, it's going to
but the 25 wouldn't be considered significant in the sense that our 150 is arbitrary and 175 is still a prudent number. Would it be? Surely it's.
Yeah, I guess it's a public, if it's a conversation you should be having with the community, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why we're doing it now.
Yeah.
This is the thing, is that we will review it every 3 years. That's the thing. So if we review it now and say, well, we're prepared to go to 175 now, it will be reviewed in 3 years' time when we will know more. Because at the moment, waters are sitting in limbo. It's still in our books. 3 years' time, we might know that it's gone. And okay, then we can bring that debt limit back down. It will come down. Yeah. Darren.
I was just going to make note that of the information that I read in the papers, I'm quite comfortable with the 175. I did pick up on the notion that that there needs to be some real discipline at council in order to make sure that we are being prudent. And so I guess that's my position. I support the 175.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Is somebody prepared to
Need to move 175.
So you're prepared to receive the report and that we resolve to amend our net debt limit to 150 to 175.
I'm happy to second that.
So moved, Kevin, and we adopt these draft policies. So moved, Kevin, seconded, Sarah Jane. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against?
Yeah, I'd say we're lower. I'd say 170.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you like it noted that you voted against it? Yeah. Anyone else voting against?
No, I'm not going to vote for it.
Thank you. No, that's really good conversation we had to have.
Suggestion, and I think it's very valid. How we pay it off, how we borrow it, how we pay it off.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Righty-ho. Thank you. We will now.
Do we have that?
Oh, James, you got your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to be recorded as voting against it as well, please. Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, can I ask a related question? Is that okay? It's related to debt and all that sort of thing. So My question is, with this increase there, talked about, rates increases this year and subsequent in years to come. So when it comes to servicing that debt, what interest rate have we used in the calculations to get the interest payments part of the ongoing rate increases? What's our percentage that we pay?
We get information from PwC, our Treasury advisors. So they've, based on our debt profile, they've worked out our cost of borrowing based on current rate or what they can see as forecast rates. So they've given us individual interest rates to use for our assumptions for the 10-year period, and they will change. They've given it to us on, we got one early October. We got an update just before we set the draft, so the rates came down a little bit, and they will change again. So it's kind of a moving feast, but we work on the best information we have at the time.
Yeah, so it is based on outsourced information, which is a really good question, Peter. Is to council.
And this is PwC.
Yeah, and back to the number. The number is
many sleeps going out.
It's page what? We'll find it.
Yeah, I can see it through.
We've got an average cost of borrowing.
Yeah.
So in the document.
And Peter, I don't mean to, again, I don't want to let sound like I'm lecturing, but we link that back to our borrowing policy. We may recall, we get swap rates and fixed rates. So we give ourselves certain cash flow by having a spread borrowing plan.
Yeah.
The spread maturity. That gives us certainty. In other words, if interest rates do move, we've sometimes we win by borrowing in a low bit, and sometimes we might lose a bit. But we give ourselves certainty.
Yeah, that's the key.
Thank you, Adrian.
Alrighty, thank you. That's thorough discussion. Right, we'll now move on to Niall and the long-term plan update and transitional option. Good discussion, guys. You've got to have it.
Yeah, got to have it. That's what our job is.
It's really getting a strong understanding of what we do and that we don't lose. Oh.
Go to the same figure at the side of the little line.
So this report is providing you an update on the long-term plan progress. And I also wanted to cover off the transitional options that it looks like we're going to be provided by central government. So firstly, just as a bit of an overall update to the long-term plan, you'll see on the agenda today that we've got the draft long-term plan for you to consider and the consultation document. The intention of our program is essentially that we will pass those to Audit New Zealand to formally start the audit work. That kicks off on Tuesday next week after the long weekend, and the audit runs through until mid-February. We will update all of the documentation and tidy everything up and present it back to you at your March council meeting. From there, the audit will present an audit opinion on the consultation document, and it will go out to the public for a 1-month consultation period, and thereafter you'll have your hearings and deliberations. So that is the program that we are currently working to. So in terms of the long-term plan transitional options, you'll note that I've attached to the report a letter from the Minister of Local Government, which effectively sets out the government's intention to introduce legislation to repeal the 3 water reforms and to restore council ownership and control of water assets. Because of the way that different councils have been approaching the 3 waters, some have built 3 waters into their long-term plans, some councils have not, and some councils have only included it for the first 1 or 2 years, as the case may be. So what the government have set out to us is that they have provided some transitional options that would apply for this long-term plan round to allow councils a bit of flexibility in how they approach it. So just to summarise, on page 47 of your agenda, there are 6 options which they are considering, and the government has said they will introduce this legislation in February next month. I don't want to cut your thunder or anything here, Noel, but I assume everybody's kind of read that. I don't think any of these things make any point for us to do. I'm kind of happy for us to carry on as we are. It seems to be the best option. So I reckon we just pick the box and go for it. Man.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. That's fine if we want to just carry on as planned. So that would be my suggested approach. Given where we're at, I think we're in a good place. But yeah, if there's any questions, have to take them.
No, I don't think there are questions. Don't you have to move that
Yeah,
recommendation? Second, Gary, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Yeah, it was pretty obvious. We were well on track to stick with the 30th June deadline. Yep. Thank you. And the next item, obviously, the approval of the audit for the draft document. Oh,
Sorry, I'm just getting to that page.
I haven't read it. It looks fine. It looks fine.
My only question was under the Tierra Spa one. It says there in the decision not to include 37.7 million SPA at this point, but include some funding in brackets 5 million to continue to explore options. Don't know if I want to bracket in 5 million in there.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Didn't we put that on the kibosh last year?
Some money.
I think there was consideration of some, so we need to.
I was going to say, I don't think we put a figure on it, did we?
There's 2 things here. It's how much we would spend on exploring it, and how much is provisionally in the budget should we go ahead with something.
So there might be 2 different things there that they've touched on. Not clarified.
We might agree to spend $50,000 or whatever to do some exploration. And that might lead to a project, but we'll allow 5 million in the budget in 3 years' time or 4 years. I don't know where it's 2 years.
So just to clarify, so on page 15 of your conservation document, we've got 200,000 for scoping and planning in 25-26 and 5 million for capital in 26-27.
May or may not be.
And it's out for consultation. Absolutely. James, give us hand up. James.
Yeah, no, I'm just really echoing those concerns. I'm really reluctant to send any signals that there'll be further investment in that facility. There may well be. I mean, it may well come up, but I think, I'm reluctant to have any expectations around sums of money or what that would look like. So just really echoing those concerns that have been raised.
And look, there was only just a little minor thing that with streetscapes and whatever that, we're not doing bins and whatever, we're actually doing bins. So, that was just a very minor thing that just didn't kind of look right.
And the one that concerned me was, of course, the resource recovery and the conversation around that. But we aren't even there yet. We haven't got the information yet to be really going.
We might start the conversation and get us rolling if we can.
Yeah, so it's going to be done in a way that's not predetermining. And that will be a separate, from what I gather, it's a timing issue with the resource recovery because we're not there yet. So it will likely have to be consulted on in a separate way.
So all those concerns that I had that were addressed by either myself or other councillors in the I'm quite happy to move that we receive the report. However, I would like to add that we have the amendments made and then it comes back to us for approval with the amendments made to it.
So what's happening here is this is the approval of the draft to go to audit. It has to be approved today to go to audit next week. It is still only a draft. It is not the final document. It is still only a draft that's going to audit. We approved the final one in March.
Okay.
Peter.
That $5 million we were talking about.
Yes.
Did we decide anything with that? Is that staying there? Or is it coming out? Is it being...
I wonder whether it could be taken out of that line and drop back down to the other one maybe. So we just include some funding to continue to explore options and then still acknowledge, in the next line down, still acknowledge the original drivers and decided community to do something with $5 million set aside in the budget to do that in the future. They feel like they're two separate things and that should maybe come down.
And I think it also signals that we have a existing, while it's not core council business, it is core to our business, and we do need to maintain it, which may require some capital and it will require. So again, it's showing that it's a business that we are continuing to operate, would be my thing. 5 million is rather arbitrary.
I think the discussion that I heard from the council prior to Christmas was that there was a desire to progress with something with regard to this bar, and 5 million was the number that was suggested, and that's the basis that we've provided the cost to the ratepayer. So having a dollar figure is quite helpful because then people can work out what the impact of the rating impact of that is.
Comment on that?
I was just going to say, it's a little disturbed to see that the Civic Centre stay removed, not deferred.
So we talked about that yesterday around having those other things in there that might distract, but we felt for the sake of transparency, we should be including those things.
Change it to deferred.
No.
Are we never going to do either of those two?
No. We'll get a new Civic Centre.
Okay, guys, we'll keep moving
And it's
on.
good to see that Whitehall was included in there.
Yeah. So, Peter, you've still got your light on? No? Okay. Okay, so yes, please.
Just because at the time this was put through to me, having talked to Lisa and Fiona in detail about the recovery centre, so I just wanted to talk to council. Make council aware that at the moment there is in the consultation document quite detailed around the future of the recovery centre. In the past, I think we talked more about not directly consulting of and having the one facility and doing a separate consultation on that over the next 4 years, so that we've got a detailed business case and we give our community all the full options with all the details. But at the moment there is that topic in the consultation document, and we're asking our community as part of this long-term plan process. But I just wanted to check that that is the approach that you wanted. I think from a staff perspective, we'd probably prefer to have the consultation document a little bit more vague, that we're putting some funding into the next 3 years to upgrade our 3 current plants to keep them going. And we do need to do something from year 4 to 10 where we've got $5.5 million in our long-term plan, but we do need to do a better business case for that and then consult with our community directly about all the different options. There's just a risk at the moment. There's not enough information in there, and we might not get useful information from our community without all the details, but you guys.
And it will become a bit of a problem for us to manage because of that debate.
I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. And that was the thing that I was concerned about, that we were going out with something we didn't have any information on. We need to build a whole case for what we might achieve going in the years ahead. So didn't want to get ahead of the horse, basically.
Just on that is what we've got in there on page 18 and 19 of your consultation document. Is that the story that you want to be telling? Because we can change that if that's not what you want to put in.
I'm happy with what Suze has. I think that's a fair and reasonable way of moving forward. I just know what happened last time when we consulted on the proposal to close Whitehouse, and it wasn't well framed. There was no data. Not enough data behind it to actually justify why we put that question and posed that.
Just to clarify, we haven't mentioned anything about the closure of any facility. We've talked about that. Council wants to, the intention is to develop a single facility across the district. We've mentioned that a business case will be developed, and we've included a budget for the upgrade to those existing sites between 2024 and 2025. And the budget, the 5.5 million for a new hub facility in 26 to 29. We're noting that we may need further funding.
And it's potentially government funding too.
We've made a note of that.
It does say you may need to close Whitehouse in year 2027. So, yeah.
That's reality, though.
Yeah.
And it's May, like it's not set in stone.
Yep.
End of stage.
Yes.
Anyway.
It's only a draft.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to we move forward because there will be some changes, but it's an audit decision whether it stacks up anyway. So, but it reads well. I felt that it was very. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few things that we can tweak. It is just the draft.
So are you happy with the resistance recovery and that section for remove the alternate option? So basically we are moving ahead with the business case and we will come up to consolidate it around those options, those alternatives.
I think we have to give direction on it. Is that a good way to manage it? Like just from
It
a
explained why I was quite happy. It gave me a reason why it was a good idea, and she said that. So
yeah, and like nothing's changing in the short term. We've got some work to do to understand what the outcome will be. We haven't predetermined.
The real challenge, as Susan expressed, is that we haven't got the business case
to
put out alongside this. So this will go out prior to that information being known. So we are, a bit of a challenge in the timing and the information. So it's just what you want to put out to your community before you have that knowledge.
You're asking for feedback and being able to make sure that we're taking that feedback on board.
And I think there's a bigger story to tell around how transfer stations will be run in the future, and it's understanding the cost of running each transfer station, and and it has an impact on rates. So yeah, no, it's good. So is everyone happy with that? No more lights on? Oh, with amendments. Okay, so we've got 1, council receives report. 2, council approves for auditing the content of the draft long-term plan 34 consultation document with amendments, and that council notes the consultation document will be reported back to council in March for adoption for public consultation and issue of the audit opinion.
So that will really be formal.
Yeah.
That issuing this to the community. At the moment, this is just being audited.
Yeah.
I'm happy with all 3 of them.
And second, thank you, Russell. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you. And then we've just got item 7.6. Which is the draft. So again, it's the total document. It's all basically there. It's the draft. So we received the report and adopted, obviously, with all the key parts of that document. Everyone happy? No comments. So someone happy to move that? Thank you, Caleb. Second day. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Thank you. No, thanks. Big piece of work, and just want to acknowledge the work that staff have put into this. It is a big piece of work, and to get it all ready for audit next week, and obviously that's what we've had to come in this week to approve it, and onwards and upwards. We gave some other feedback yesterday, just little minor details, so I'm sure there'll be some words and pictures, some photos.
We'll take care of those.
Thank you. So with there being no business, I will now close the meeting. Good discussion today. I think everyone engaged. Thank you for the engagement. I think it was good.